Picture it, a pristine white gallery, quiet enough that your footsteps feel like a performance. And in the middle of the room, a box, or a row of boxes, or a metal slab, or a fluorescent light on the wall, doing what fluorescent lights do. And somewhere in the room, maybe out loud, maybe just in your soul, someone says, "Wait, this is art?" And minimalism, in its iciest possible tone, says, "Yes, now deal with it." Welcome to Art Happens, the divine mess of art history, presented by J Squared Atelier. I'm James William Moore, your chaotic docent through art history. And this is Movement in About 10 Minutes, where we take one movement and break down why it still matters. Today, minimalism. The movement that looked at art history, all its drama, symbolism, brushwork, virtuosity, and emotional weather, and said, what if we stripped this thing all the way down until there was nowhere left for you to hide? Minimalism really takes shape in the 1960s, especially in the United States. And if you want the simplest version, here it is. Minimalism is art that reduces itself to essential forms. No theatrical illusion, no expressive flourishes, no sentimental storytelling. No, look how beautiful I suffered into this canvas. Instead, you get geometry, repetition, industrial materials, plain surfaces, objects that refuse to pretend to be anything other than what they are. And that refusal, well, that's the whole point. Because before minimalism, a lot of art still carried this expectation that it should represent something. A story, a person, a feeling, a heroic inner truth. Even abstraction often still had the big emotional charge, that sense of the artist pouring themselves into the work. Minimalism looked at all that and said, what if artwork didn't perform emotion for you at all? What if it didn't narrate? What if it didn't confess? What if it didn't seduce you with painterly touch and personal drama? What if it just simply existed? Not as a picture of a thing, not as a symbol of a thing, just a thing, an object in space, and you, another object in space, have to reckon with it. That sounds simple, but in practice, it is rude as hell, and I mean that as a compliment. Because here's where minimalism gets savage. The real content is often not the object itself. The real content is your encounter with it. Your body in relation to it, your movement around it, your sense of scale, your boredom, your irritation, your need for there to be more. Minimalism exposes how much people want art to reassure them. We want clues. We want narrative. We want technical spectacle. We want something we can point to and say, yes, I understand why this matters. Minimalism says, nope, I'm not going to spoon feed you meaning. I'm going to give you structure, material, proportion, repetition, and space. And then you are going to notice yourself noticing. That is why the classic complaint, "My kid can make this," always makes me laugh a little. Because that line is usually meant as a takedown. But what it often reveals is frustration that the old rules aren't working. Your kid could maybe stack boxes, sure, but that is not the same as shifting the terms of what art can be, what a gallery experience can be, or how meaning gets produced between object, space, and viewer. Minimalism does not ask, can you admire my skill? It asks, can you stay present in this encounter without demanding spectacle every 5 seconds? Which honestly is harder than people think. Because silence is hard, emptiness is hard, slowness is hard, and minimalism knows it. It weaponizes restraint. Minimalist artists often used industrial materials: steel, aluminum, plexiglass, fluorescent lights, brick, plywood, materials that looked fabricated, manufactured, repeated, precise. This mattered because the handmade gesture, the visible trace of the artist's emotional labor, had dominated so much of modern art discourse. Minimalism steps away from that. Sometimes it feels like the artist moved out of the romantic studio and into a warehouse. No tortured genius with paint under the fingernails, no moody brushstroke declaring existential crisis. Instead, form, surreality, surface, placement. Think of Donald Judd. Stacks, progressions, boxes with immaculate intervals. His work isn't really about composition in the old sense. It's about presence, a thing repeated in space, until space itself becomes part of the work. Think of Carl Andre. Floor pieces made from repeated units, metal plates, bricks, modules. Works that challenge your instincts about sculpture. Do you walk around them? Do you walk on them? Is that disrespectful? Is that participation? The uncertainty is part of the experience. Then there's Dan Flavin with fluorescent lights. I love this because on paper it sounds almost like a prank. The art is fluorescent tubes, but in the room, the light spills onto the wall, onto the floor, onto your body. The artwork is not just the fixture, it's what the light does to the architecture, how it alters atmosphere, how it turns the room into an event. And then we have Agnes Martin, and she complicates this whole minimalist conversation in such a beautiful way because her grids are subtle, quiet, almost trembling. At first glance, it can seem simple to the point of vanishing, but the longer you look, the stranger and more intimate they become. Her work is less industrial swagger and more meditative insistence. Not loud, not theatrical, but absolutely uncompromising. It's like the canvas is asking you to lower your voice and maybe your blood pressure. Minimalism breaks the old agreement between art and audience. That agreement said, I, the artwork, will give you something obvious to latch on to. Emotion, story, virtuosity, symbolism, mystery with a payoff. Minimalism says, I will give you almost nothing. And in doing so, it reveals how badly you want that old agreement back. That is the power move. Minimalism isn't empty. It just relocates where the action is. The action is in duration, in repetition, in physical relation, in your own perceptual habits. It asks, can you tolerate a work that does not flatter you with instant access? Can you pay attention to proportion, to rhythm, to interval, to the way a repeated form changes as your body moves through space? Can you notice how quickly your brain starts narrating, judging, resisting, mocking, dismissing? Because the work refuses to do that labor for you. That's where minimalism gets almost philosophical, because at a certain point, it stops being whether you like the object. It becomes about what kind of viewer are you willing to be? Patient, open, defensive, hungry for entertainment, uncomfortable with silence? Minimalism has a way of making all of that visible. It can feel cold, sure. But sometimes what people called cold is just an artwork declining to perform warmth on command. Minimalism still matters because it changed the conversation. It pushed art away from illusion and towards encounter. It helped redefine sculpture, installation, and the role of the viewer. It made space itself part of the artwork. It made experience part of the artwork. And whether later artists embraced it, rejected it, or complicated it, they had to respond to it. Because once minimalism asks, what happens when art is just an object in a room with a body? There is no going fully backward from that. You start seeing its influence everywhere. in contemporary installation, in architecture, in design, in branding, frankly, in the visual language of luxury and tech and modern taste. That stripped down, controlled, less is more aesthetic, minimalism helped normalize that as cultural power. But of course, and here comes the delicious irony, a movement that began by stripping things down also became a style people used to signal sophistication. So yes, minimalism can absolutely be deep. And yes, minimalism can absolutely get co-opted into expensive emptiness. That tension is part of the story too. Because art history never gives us a clean ending, only new rooms to argue inside. Minimalism doesn't whisper, and it doesn't explain itself. It stands there, cool, still, almost nothing, and dares you to notice how much of the meaning was already going to come from you. That's minimalism. The movement that looked at centuries of artistic drama and said, cool, now stand here with a metal box and your own unresolved expectations. Because the almost nothing was never really nothing. It was a mirror, a measuring tape, a dare. So if you walked into this episode thinking minimalism was cold, maybe it's not cold. Maybe it's just brutally honest. It doesn't hand you meaning. It makes you notice the space where meaning shows up. Thanks for spending this time with me on Art Happens, the divine mess of art history, presented by J Squared Atelier. I'm James William Moore, that chaotic docent of yours that's taking you through art history. Until next time, keep looking longer than you're comfortable with.